So this week we're going to be talking about some tools that we're going to use. I'm going to go deep into like data sets and how to make them. And then depending on how much time we have, I'll go through the models. If the models end up like going over to the next class, that's fine. I'll show like some of the models we're going to use in class, and I'll probably try to demo them in Runway just so everyone can understand like how they're used. So as a reminder, here's where we are this week. So we're in week 2. So last week we did a 7 inspiration. So next week I think what I'll do is I'll do a little bit more of those short demos on different models. And then maybe if we have time during class today, we can talk about what projects everyone wants to work on. That way I can start getting people like, you can start thinking about what data sets and where to grab stuff. And then we can really start on projects next week. So I think for like week 3 and week 4, it's when we'll see like, I want to try to work with everyone individually to like help build their project. And if I'm seeing that like 3 or 4 people all want to work on the same thing, I might like do a little demo with the 3 of them, like just be like, okay, here's how to do this particular model. And what I'll do is I'll record those so that way like everyone has an opportunity to like view them after class. So if you're working on like a cycle GAN, but somebody else is working on style GAN, like I don't necessarily have to like disrupt you from working on your thing, but I can record the lecture about like sort of how to make stuff, and then you can look at it afterward and it's available to you. I think that'll be like the easiest way to like make sure that no one's missing stuff, but also like help everyone make sure they're working on a project. And then week 5, we can decide if we want to like, we'll sort of see where everyone is by the end of week 4, if they're feeling good about their projects. If you want to do a presentation type of thing, we can do that. If we want to just keep working on projects, we can do that. And then what I'll probably do on week 5 is also talk about like, if you're really interested in this, like where else you can go to get more information. I can also talk about some other tools that we're not going to use in this class, but that might be valuable to you after class. Yeah, how does that sound? Cool. All right, so, and then I think here's what we'll try to do today. So we'll do a Paperspace demo. I'll just talk through sort of like what I installed on most people's machines. I'll talk through using terminal. How many people in here have used terminal before? Okay. Oh, okay. So maybe that'll be easier than it's been in the past, but we'll see. I'll just lead you through sort of the pieces that I generally use, especially for this class. And then we'll dive deep into data sets. I'll talk a little bit about like what kind of data sets you need, where to find them, those sort of things. I have this app called Dataset Tools. I'll show you guys how to use it at a pretty basic level. You can install this. Everyone has Macs? Great. Okay, so you can install that on your computers. The thing about Dataset Tools is it's basically like a way to do almost Photoshop level work, but like at scale. And that doesn't require Paperspace to use it. So basically what I recommend doing is like using Dataset Tools locally and then just like uploading all your files once everything's cropped. Because if you're working with like thousands and thousands of images, this Dataset Tools thing can take a couple hours to run, and it's better to do that locally for a couple reasons. And then, like I said, if we have time left after class, or after I run through all this stuff, we'll do a models overview. And I'll just run through some models, and we'll do stuff in Runway, just to sort of look at how things work, without having to dig into how to use them on Paperspace. Okay, so started talking about this a little bit earlier in class. Why do we have to use Paperspace? Hey there. Hi. So the reason we have to use Paperspace is for machine learning, you really have to use what's called a GPU. That's a graphics processing unit. If you're into gaming, you probably already know about like why graphics cards are really important. But if you remember in last class, I talked about like that sort of that graph and how there's like a bunch of different little points and you're trying to draw a line through them, right? If you're doing that with billions of different points, there's 2 ways you could do that. You could do that one by one, which is going to be really slow, or you can do them all in like a cluster sequence. And it turns out that's what GPUs are really good at, right? They can take a bunch of different info on each little slot within their GPU, and then combine them together afterward. So that's basically why we need to use a GPU. I've started to see more and more places, like there are some. Basically, we have to use NVIDIA cards because NVIDIA is like one of the biggest players, and they write a lot of libraries and stuff to help us do this. There are more and more GPUs, like just general graphics, like AMD or other places that are beginning to get in on that. So in the future, there may be ways to do it on like a Mac or to on a Windows machine. But in general, like right now, we're all working on Linux GPUs, and it's like the best way to work on stuff. There's a couple other reasons why I like Paperspace. So like you could do this on if you've used AWS, like there are AWS boxes that have GPUs as well. There's probably a bunch of other things. I know last class someone said like I have I work in motion graphics and I have my own GPU card that I run stuff through. Could I do that? Turned out actually ended up being a little bit of a pain in the ass to set it up. It also like some of these processes you might run for days at a time, and he was like, yeah, I can't really give up my GPU for days at a time when I'm working, right? So it's like, it ends up being that this is like a pretty good method. The other reason Paperspace is great is they have some built-in ML templates. So I can start showing just what I did with everyone when I was installing stuff. Let's see here. So in Paperspace, this is what you, so basically what you do, and most of you won't have to do this at all because I'll do it for you. But in your account over in Compute, there's a thing called Machines. So this is Tim's account. I hope there's no personal information here. Here, Tim, there probably isn't. They obfuscate your credit card, so no one can steal from you. But when you go in here and you make a new machine, basically if you're used to setting up servers on like AWS or anything, you're probably pretty familiar with some of this stuff. Basically, you choose a location. You always want to choose a location that's like closest to you, so that happens to be the East Coast version. In here, in public templates, so usually we set the Windows templates. You set the public templates. You'll see there's a thing called ML in a box. So basically what this comes pre-installed with a bunch of different libraries that we're going to need for the class. So this is really simple. Like in other places, you have to like install like 50 different tools, like other things. This just makes it one click, and it's really nice that way. The next thing that's really great about Paperspace is it's fairly affordable. So I'll run through like how you can track the amount of money you're spending. Paperspace is 78 cents for the machine that we use. It's 78 cents an hour, and you've been given $100 in credit, so it's about 4 days, a little bit over 4 days of time. But this is it's an hourly rate, and you can turn your machine on and off. So what's nice here is if you're only using it for a couple hours, turn it on, let it run for a couple hours while you're doing stuff, and then you turn it off, and you're only charged for the time that you are using it. So when it's off, they're not charging you for it. They are charging you some like general monthly fees for like storage spaces and other things, but that's pretty low. So on everyone's machines, it's $7 a month for those like storage fees and other things. But beyond that, you're only paying 78 cents an hour. And then it's really, really reliable. So I use other GPUs sometimes, and if I'm doing a thing that takes a week-long time to process, 3 days in, it'll just turn off because whoever's running it like has turned off their machine or other things are happening. And then all of a sudden I like lose that work, or like I lose a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on. Paperspace is super reliable. I've literally never had it go down on me. So it's like a 99.98% uptime. So for this class especially, if you're like new to this stuff, it's good to just like not have to worry about debugging like why did my machine turn off, what's going on, that sort of thing. So it's really simple in that regard. And then the last thing is it's got a pretty simple UI to get up and running. Other ones sometimes don't have a shell command, or they don't have other ways to access your desktop. It can just get pretty gnarly to get set up. But Paperspace makes that a little bit easier. So what I'll do next is I'm just going to run through how I installed everyone's software, and I'll also just install it on Tim's because I didn't get to it earlier. So I was showing you that basically on Paperspace, you've got this machine here. So you select where your location is. We're going to do East Coast. We select the ML in a box. And then here you've got choose machines. So I know some of you had like, basically what happened this is what happened in Lucy's case, is there a little lock icon? And when you hit that lock icon, it says like, hey, why do you need to use this? I was typing in like, hey, it's Derek Schultz, because I like knew the support person that was turning it on. But then it turned out he was out. So like someone else probably saw it and was like, I don't know who the fuck this is. So like Lucy got hit with like a, hey, you might be hacking us. So for those of you who maybe missed this, like GPUs are also great for Bitcoin mining. And it turns out that I think 78 cents an hour is less than you used to make on Bitcoin in an hour. So basically it's like someone was using Paperspace to make more money. So they like had to like do some other stuff. And also there's some other things you can do with GPUs that like are kind of hacky. So they used to have this like heavy security. Now it's gotten a little bit lax because the Bitcoin market kind of dropped through. But so that's what happens if that happens to you again. I got Tim access to this one, so we're going to choose the P5000. So basically each of these is slightly more powerful. V100s are really, really powerful. We don't need it for anything we're doing. Basically it'll run faster, but like not faster to the point of where the costs like make sense. So I always pick this one. The reason you can't pick the P4000 is if you're gonna do next frame prediction, which is like a pretty high res video system, this might crap out on you. So that's why I just went with this one. It's a little bit more expensive, but it generally works a little bit better and it's faster. And I know everything that everyone might want to do will work with it. Next thing is you pick the storage size. So again, I know that sometimes we work with stuff that has some pretty big space issues. So I always recommend the 100 gigabyte. And you'll see like the storage rates are here per month. It defaults you to 50. I know that sometimes you overrun that. So I generally pick the 100. You could do 250 if you're just lazy and you just want to leave everything on there. I tend to like check in on it every day and like prune stuff. And I'll explain what some of that is a little bit later, what you might need to prune. But basically 100 is about right. You don't need to pick anything from here. The only thing you do need is you need a public IP address. And that's important so you can access it via FTP. So this just gives you a public IP. You can then log into it. If you don't want this, there's still ways to log in through Paperspace directly, but it's a little bit more annoying. I also generally recommend just turning off auto snapshot because I just haven't found that people use it. I don't really use it much either. And then lastly, there is payment, which Tim's already set up. But for us, we have promo codes. So so this is Tim's promo code. Works. Okay, cool. Once that's all set up, so now you've got $100 in credits. It'll say $100 in credits here. When I click create your Paperspace, it'll drop down to 93 because it's taking that $7 a month out. And now what it's doing is it's provisioning a machine. That just means like, so Paperspace runs on basically like an AWS system, just a whole bunch of racks of servers, either at Paperspace's offices or somewhere else. Now it's like taking one of those servers and saying like, okay, that's now Tim's. So while this is provisioning, it's just like doing a bunch of loading of software, and it's basically loading that template that we were talking about. So this is all getting like loaded on. Tim, you'll probably get an email, and you just got it? Okay. So you'll get 2 emails from Paperspace. One is saying, hey, you created this machine. The next will be, hey, this machine is up and you have a password. That password's like, it's like 8 letters and numbers. It's like pretty well encrypted. But it did come through an email, so if you want to switch it, I can show you how. But in general, like I think it's fine to keep it. I don't have anyone's passwords because I just set these up for you. There's one way to access this where you don't need that password. But I recommend just keeping the password for yourself and just using that to log in. And I'll show you how it's set up. Yeah. This usually just takes a couple minutes. So while this is provisioning, I'll show you that this is all of the information about your machine. You don't really need to worry. The only thing you need from here is this public IP address. And you'll see that when you hover over it, it gives you an IP address that you can copy. Yep, so now this is ready. So there's 3 ways that you can access a Paperspace machine. You can access it via terminal in your own laptop. You can access it via terminal in Paperspace, or you can access the desktop of this machine. So basically, like, a server is just literally like a laptop. It's not actually a laptop, but it's like a laptop's computer just sitting somewhere else. So what I did for everyone, because I don't have your passwords, is I can go into the desktop here via this. And this is now your machine. So this is like, literally when I go in here, into the files, these are all the files that are on the machine that we just set up. So what I did for everyone, which I'm gonna do for Tim now, is I go in here, and this is basically your applications. There's an application called Terminal. And you just double click on that, and now you basically have a terminal. You have a terminal to access this machine, which is sometimes weird because if you have a terminal on your local, you're not accessing your local machine, or you could, but sometimes you're accessing this machine. It's a little confusing, I admit. But if you're basically like not comfortable with terminal, this is probably like the best way to access stuff. Is to log into your desktop and then open that, and then basically it's like all you're doing is writing commands for this desktop. So the thing that's funky about this is you're now typing commands on a virtual desktop, and you'll do stuff like on your local, you'll try to copy it, and then you'll try to paste it here, and it won't work. So the thing is, copy paste commands won't work unless you're in this virtual environment. So like unless you log into like Firefox or here and then copy and paste there, even then it gets funky. So the downside of this is you have to like type stuff by hand. So all I did is, well actually let me just do it through here. So I have a script that is this, so it's just artificial images setup. If you're familiar with Bash, it's just a Bash script. All it does is installs a bunch of software. So all I need to do over here, and again, if you're like not familiar with Git or terminal, don't worry about what I'm typing. But all I'm gonna do is clone that repo. I wish I'd made this repo name much shorter because this is really annoying. Artificial images setup. So I clone that down, and now you'll immediately notice that on my files, there's now a new folder called artificial images setup. And inside there is the bash command. So all you do is artificial images, and I'll go over a demo of how to use terminal, but basically you can like type out a little bit and then hit tab and it auto-completes or it guesses what you want. You just do that. And then inside of there's that file called bash.all.sh. When you hit that, it's just gonna start installing a bunch of stuff. So this is all I did for everyone's machines. It took like 5 minutes.
You already went in and did that.
I already went and did that on probably not yours yet, just because but I'll do it by the end of this week.
Mm-hmm.
So for a couple of you, it's already set up. Tim, I'm setting it now. Is this actually loading? The only thing I'm never sure about is if this loads in the right place. It didn't. Okay, that's fine. I need to change the script a little bit.
Does that mean that you can download any type of software onto this machine?
Yep.
So if like you find a machine, you can do that as well?
Could. I wouldn't necessarily recommend. So again, it's like remember how much it costs per hour? And installing like software you could be running on your local computer on here is going to cost you more money than it would if you just run it on local. So you have to like, I know there are sometimes like maybe there are motion things where you want to use a GPU, and this might be an easier way to do that. It's just about whether or not the cost makes sense. So this runs for a while because we're installing a lot of software. I'll talk a little bit about what we're installing. So these are the folders that you're now running with. So there's a folder called Dataset Tools, which we're going to work on later today. This is like a tool to help you produce, like basically change and alter images at scale. Neural Style TF is the program we're going to use to do style transfer. Pix2Pix HD is what we're going to do for next frame prediction. PyTorch, CycleGAN, and Pix2Pix are our CycleGAN and Pix2Pix libraries. They just happen to all be in the same repo, so we can run them together. We're like, you can't run them together, but like you can basically do CycleGAN or Pix2Pix through that. And then StyleGAN is the StyleGAN model. And I'll run over what each of those models does a little bit later. But the thing that's important to remember is that, or like the thing that I did for you guys is like you might not use every one of these in this class, but you've got access to them out after this class. And also you can run this if you like. If 6 months from now you want to come back to this, like you could run this exact same stuff and get the exact same folders and files and work off it that way. So I'll document like a little bit of what I did here for everyone, just so that you can come back to it later if you want to. But if you're willing to pay $7 a month for storage, you could just turn this machine off for a month and then come back to it, and it would still all be there. So basically, there's also like tests running to make sure that I installed everything. This is now running a StyleGAN test. So see this like iteration. We'll talk about that a little bit later with StyleGAN. But basically, like it's running some tests, which is why it takes a little bit longer.
So with a Paperspace accounts at some point it'll like be like, hey, you want to keep paying for storage?
Yeah, so the thing I recommend doing is just keeping an eye on it. So you'll see here it says $93. I don't know when it actually like charges you, but it charges you like it rounds up to a certain amount. So if you like basically if we run this for 40 minutes, it only charges you for 40 minutes of that time. And then at some point it sort of says, hey, like I've combined all the time that you've spent and like you now have like spent this amount of money, it'll take it out of your credits. So like what I would do is if you're running stuff, just like every once in a while log in and just check to make sure your credits are still above zero. I think if you entered everyone had to enter a credit card in, I think at some point it'll just start charging your card. Mm-hmm. So like if you leave this running for like the next week, it will charge your card. You will lose money. So it's important to remember to turn your machine off when you're done with it. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just 1 minute once everything is installed on Tim's machine. So almost there. Actually, do you mind pulling up the password you got? Mm-hmm. Cool, yeah. A second, thanks. Okay, let's just do it now. So while this is finishing loading, let me show you the other way you can access this. So if you're on your local machine, and you open Terminal, which is just an application that comes on everyone's Macs, you can type in a command here. So the command is SSH, and then it's Paperspace @ and then what you want to do is you want to go into your Paperspace machine, and you want to grab your public IP. So this is the public IP address. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it here. So this is a command that basically says, I want to access this machine using this username. Your username is always Paperspace, and then your IP address. So then you hit enter, and it's going to ask you if you really want to do this, and you just say yes. And now it's going to ask you for a password, which I just lost.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I was like trying to like constantly tap on it just to make sure. Cool. So the other thing to know is like passwords will never display in Terminal when you're typing them in. So like I'm going to type in his password now, and you're not going to see it, but it's actually being entered in. So then when I hit enter, it's going to log me in. And now I'm into his account. Go back. So let's go back over to the machine here, make sure everything's loaded. Yep, so our thing is loaded here. I need to do one other thing, which is just to, it's got installed in the wrong place. So basically you want to drag all of this and this guy. Let's do it one at a time. This guy. Okay, so now everything's installed correctly on his machine. Now remember, this is the virtual desktop. This is I'm accessing that machine through the terminal. So if you've ever used terminal, there's a command called ls. That just lists everything that is in that directory. So now look, if we look at what was on the virtual desktop, we'll see all these folders. And if I go back to terminal, I will see the exact same folders, named the exact same way, just in this space. So terminal is just like a text version of your desktop, essentially. And there are different commands you can type in to access different things. So in this case, let's say I want to go into this artificial images setup and look at it. So I can go CD, artificial, hit tab, which just auto-completes. Hit enter. And then if I hit LS again, now I see the files that are inside that folder. So that's, I mean, like, I think a lot of people get afraid of the terminal because they're like, it looks like a hacker thing, it looks creepy, like, or like, I don't know what I'm doing. And all you're really doing is like playing with files in like a non-GUI format, right? So every time you like drag a file from your desktop into like another folder, you're not doing anything different than like typing in a command. It's just a different interface. So I'm going to turn Tim's machine off really quickly now that we've sort of like demoed some things. And the way to do that is when you go back to your machines, there's now a list of machines here. If you can have multiple, you got up to 5, I think at least. You'll see this saying on and ready. So what you want to do is you want to click this little gear icon up here. And then you want to hit shutdown. So there's a couple options here. One is you can hit shutdown, you can hit restart, or you can actually hit deactivate. Now deactivate is going to destroy your machine. So basically it's going to like completely erase everything that's here, and you're going to lose your machine. So if you know, like at the end of this class, you're like, I'm never going to touch this shit again, I hate it, hit deactivate and it'll delete everything. It'll never charge you again for that machine either. If you hit shutdown, it's going to turn your machine off, and it's going to stop charging you the hourly rate, but it's still going to charge you per month for that storage fee. So if you hit shutdown and you don't use this thing for 6 months, it's going to charge you $42. Now, if you still have credits left, it's going to keep coming out of there. But if you are out of credits, it's going to start charging your card. So remember that deactivate is the way to destroy everything and like stop being charged at all. Shutdown is just going to shut down and turn off your hourly rate. And restarts the machine. Sometimes only do that, but it's pretty rare. So now Tim's machine is off. He's no longer getting charged. He also didn't update his credits. Again, like I think there's a way to go in here and actually see how many minutes you've used the thing for. Let's go here. Let's go over here and go to billing.
Can you shut it off and turn it off?
There's probably a way to do it. I've never done it. I usually just shut it off there. That way I know it's off. There's also then a GUI that says like, hey, this thing's off. So we can see here, like, so we've used it for basically 15 minutes. So you can always come back and like you can just sort of see like how much do I use it for. Eventually, like, if your credits will start decreasing too, and then you can know that way. But if you're ever like really like, oh, I just want to make sure like not hitting my limit, just go to your billing account and then go to utilization, and you can see how much you're spending. All right, so done a little Paperspace demo. So again, I talked about terminal. Really, like, don't be afraid of it. There's pretty much nothing you can do in terminal that will like permanently destroy your machine, or like you have to know a special code in order to like destroy your machine. And I'm just basically not going to tell anyone how to do that. That way you cannot delete stuff. So the most you're going to get is you're going to get weird cryptic errors, and I am here to help you with those cryptic errors. So if you ever come across those, just jump in Slack and like copy and paste the error message and like Slack it to me, and we can figure out what's going on. So I think everyone in here said they've worked on the command line at least a little bit. So this is like kind of a review, but let's go over it anyway. So yeah, like it's a command line interface is like a way to access things without using like a lot of software, and it basically allows you to like run a machine from like a remote computer, which is really nice. It's actually really helpful. Like I said, if you've never used them before, you will get a little frustrated, but I promise you that it's like worth it, or it's powerful in ways that like make up for it in the lack of like UI or user experience. And also, I'm gonna give you all the commands you need, so like you shouldn't ever like feel like you don't know exactly what you need to type in. This is like a general command in a terminal. This is basically like basically like this looks like gobbledygook to most people, but really all this says is, hey computer, use Python, which is a language, like a software language. Use Python to run this file called script.py and add these options, which is, there's an option called max size, which you can guess is the maximum size, and then you're giving it an argument of 512. So like This looks really hard, but when you actually break it down, it's pretty simple. And most of the scripts that I'm going to show you are going to break down like this. So there'll be a Python, and there'll be a script, a file you're going to run, and then you're going to pass a bunch of arguments. And that's it. So if you really want to know, like, this is called the command or utility. It often indicates like a language or like a system of commands you usually use. This is the argument. It's often, for most of the cases that we're going to do, it's like a file you want to run. And then these are flags, parameters, options. They've got 1,000 names. These are basically variables. So in whatever is this script.py file, there's clearly a way to change the size of something. So you use 512, you could use 1024. Like, we'll have to figure out what those inputs could be, but that's what we need to know. Included here is like a cheat sheet. So there are a lot of like shortcut key commands for things. So I sort of showed like the ls command. One of the things that's nice about something like this is that when you also use like the up key, you get the previous command. So that's really helpful. You're going to run a command and it'll break or like something will go wrong, and you want to run it again, you just press up. So it's basically like a history command. So you can press up again and get a new command, up again, get a new command, down like is also history. So there's stuff like that. The other thing that I find really helpful is the option click command. So basically like if I just try to click in here and edit this, there's like no, like you're usually used to like a word editor where you can like click in and you can edit something. The way to do that in terminal is to do option click. So if I hit option click, now I'm like here and now I can edit anything. Oh, it's covered. I can edit anything that's like under here or like back and forth here. There's other key commands in that cheat sheet that might come in handy if you're like really interested in like being super efficient. But a lot of what we're going to do here is we're not going to type in like 30 commands in a row. We're going to type in one command. So you want to edit it even in like a text editor to make sure you're getting it right, and then like copy and paste it into here. That works fine. There's like no problem with that. The other thing that I think is really important to know is that you will be doing a lot of work where it's like you're kind of working with like a folder or like a finder command. What's really nice is that inside of Mac in a finder, you can just click on the folder. You can hit Command C, like you're going to copy it. And then what you can do is you can come over here. Let me just clear this out. You can hit, so like one thing you do is what's called a CD, which is change directory. So this is basically saying I want to move to this directory. What is that directory? So I just copied the whole path of that. So now when I press paste, it basically copies that whole path. So that's going to be really helpful in some of the stuff we're going to do with dataset tools. Because otherwise you're like, wait, I'm here, but I want to go to this file. It's like, it's really complicated to try to figure out directories sometimes. Usually the easiest way is just to copy the folder and then hit paste here to get that whole path. Oh, lost my guy. Where'd it go? So anyway, if you want to look and like dig into the cheat sheet, that's there. I'll also say like after this class, if you're like looking for a command to do, I will often Google stuff. I'll often Google like how do I do X in Linux terminal. If you type in like Linux terminal or like command line, there'll be a ton of answers to say like, hey, this is how you do this thing, or hey, this is how you do this thing. And often I'll just try stuff, which isn't like maybe the best way to go about it, but it works. It's pretty rare you're gonna break stuff looking up these commands. So don't like be afraid to like try some of this thing. The thing that's nice about is like Paperspace is like it's a virtual server. If you really destroyed it, you just like destroy your machine and start over. Like it's not like it's your laptop where like you now have to take it to like a hardware like person and get something figured out. Like with these virtual servers, you can just destroy them and start over again, and like it's not the end of the world. All right, so I did a little terminal demo. I'll do a little bit more when we get into the dataset tools, but I want to quickly jump into the datasets talk. Or I guess before that, are there any questions about either Paperspace or terminal?